All right, guys, today I want to discuss one of the most overused and most commonly used training tools, which is the speed ladder or agility ladder. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. The reason I want to discuss this is because you see every sport coach, every personal trainer, every person on the planet seems to use this tool for sport performance training or for so many things. It's so commonly used, and I want to discuss what it's actually useful for and what it's not useful for. In reality, the speed ladder it's very misnamed. It doesn't train speed, it doesn't train agility. The only real benefits or the only real use for an agility ladder or speed ladder that I ever use is for warm-ups. If we're trying to just increase the heart rate and use it as a thermogenic, just like doing jumping jacks or shuffling or any of those type of drills, it can be beneficial for that. Or I like it sometimes with my fighters or my athletes. We'll do some barefoot stuff in the ladder, some low-level hops, and that's really to, again, as a warm-up, to activate muscles in the foot and ankle and facilitate the type of patterns that we're going to then use later in that session. The only other time I would ever use that is in aerobic style conditioning circuits that I do sometimes with my fighters, where instead of just running on the treadmill for 30 to 45 minutes, we can use some different movement patterns just to keep their heart rate up. So we'll just do some different ladder drills in the circuits that we do. So that's really the only uses for it. Keep the heart rate up, get the heart rate up in the warm-up, or activate some patterns if you're doing some barefoot stuff in it, some very low-level hopping drills to activate some patterns. Outside of that, it has very, very little use. And the reason that it doesn't have any use in sport performance is when it comes to training speed, real speed development or agility is all about your ability to absorb and produce force. Neither of those you're doing in the speed ladder. There's very little force being produced in any of those little quick foot patterns, and there's no force really being absorbed at all. And that's really how we train athletes. If I'm working on linear speed development, it's all about how much force I can produce into the ground to propel me forward. If I'm working on agility and change of direction, it's all about absorbing high levels of force as I go to make a cut and then redirecting that force as I get out and go into a different pattern. Going through these coordinated type movements in the speed ladder don't train any of those things. It's very low levels of force, and the repetitiveness of these patterns doesn't translate into anything. Running through a speed ladder and doing little quick steps in this coordinated pattern, the only thing that would translate into is if you were doing that exact same movement pattern, maybe if you were dancing. So also when we train agility for athletes, especially as we work towards higher level athletes, we don't want to train them in a specific pattern over and over and over and over, because we want them to develop these skills and the coordination to produce these different types of force and absorb force in the chaotic environment that is sport. They're never going to do that exact same type of cut over and over and over again, unless maybe they're a wide receiver who's running a specific pattern or a specific route. But even them, they're reacting to defenders. So it's going to be a little bit different every time. Therefore, we don't want to train a repetitive pattern of the same exact foot pattern over and over and over, because that's not going to translate into what they're actually going to see on the field. I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else, so this is not meant to call you out if you use speed ladders or agility ladders in your training all the time. When I first got started, my biggest goal was to learn more and more drills that I could do in the ladder. And that's why most people use it, because they don't understand what real performance training and what real speed training actually is. And it's very simple to learn. You just pull out a ladder, you learn a couple of these different patterns. It's hard for people to learn, but then they start to understand it, so it seems like they're progressing and actually getting better. However, it's going to have no correlation to sport performance whatsoever. It's not going to carry over onto the field. And ultimately, if you're doing speed ladders in your training sessions more than once a week, you're wasting your time. So if your trainer's doing that, we need to look at some different stuff, because ultimately it's a waste of time. And I used to use it sometimes in my training sessions when I didn't have a lot of knowledge and I didn't know a lot of stuff. I knew that I could go through speed ladder drills for 10 to 15 minutes, and that would kill 15 minutes of my 45 minute or 60 minute session. So I'm challenging you guys to get out there and really understand what speed training actually is and what agility training actually is, and stop wasting people's time running through these coordinated patterns in these speed ladders that are actually going to have no benefit to sport performance.